I mean, these are really trying times at the moment. It's a once in a century pandemic is happening, and what do you think about people like Matrix Fight Night who are putting up events of this caliber in these trying times, and what do you think is the importance of hosting such events, especially in these times?
So I think that's a really great question. What that also does is your question actually answers a lot of criticism about hosting sporting and MMA events during the pandemic. Now here's the thing. During the early part of the year, we were not too sure about how exactly this virus works, how it was affecting certain kinds of people, how certain people were reacting to it. So there was a lot of uncertainty during the early time of this pandemic. However, down the line, towards the end of the year, now most government authorities and then health organizations are pretty much aware now how this works. So it's a lot more easier for us to enforce these, COVID-19 safety policies, health and wellness policies, which are so much more beneficial, and we're more aware and educated about the virus to host an event of this scale at this time. But regardless of the situation, regardless of us braving through this time and hosting the show, what I want to say is that Matrix Fight Night has completed all the health and safety policies. All fighters are tested, all officials are tested, all staff are tested. I'm tested, the management is tested. Now, the tests are not just done one-off at the airport and then it's done. We're actually been tested every day. I just came out from a test. So, including the camera team, the production, everybody is being tested. And I think that is a high level of safety and care being exercised by Matrix Fight Night. So, whether it's the right timing, whether it's the best location, whether it is being concerned and following all the policies, I think Matrix Fight Night has got it right during the COVID-19 time.
When you think about events like this and then being done at a time like this, you would expect it to be some an event from a Western organization or from a bigger, more established, older organization, bringing in international fighters of international repute. But here there's an organization bringing in Indian fighters, and since you've seen Indian MMA from its inception, in many cases being responsible for that, how important do you think this is for Indian, and what magnitude of an opportunity do you think this is for Indian mixed martial arts fighters?
So I think we also need to consider how the virus is acting in particular geographical locations. Right now in the United States, in the United Kingdom, and France, the cases are a lot more higher. We don't understand the reason why that's happening. However, in India, the cases are a lot lower than how it is as compared to the United States. Now, I'm not, a government official to give you any statistics, but I just understand in a general note, the way things are being done here in Dubai, especially by Dubai Sports Council and then by the United Arab Emirates, everything that Dubai is doing has very strict and stringent safety policies. So because this location is key, that's why it's important that this entire marriage between Indian MMA and Dubai sports has actually worked just perfect. So bringing in all these Indian athletes, people who have been training throughout the lockdown time, the lockdown has proved really good for a lot of Indian athletes who were having so many opportunities but thought that maybe they needed just a little bit more time for preparation. They've had an entire year for preparation. These lions are ready to roar. I just met some of the fighters that came off of their preparation in the warm-up rooms. These guys are ready to rumble. So I think it is a next step in the evolution of Indian MMA. When you're looking at these fighters now, these are just not ordinary fighters. These guys are well conditioned. These guys are ready athletes, and they are ready to fight. They are ready to throw down. And what MFN is doing is giving the opportunity to Indian fighters so that the world can see what Indian fighters have to showcase.
What are the kind of roles that sort of governing bodies like GAMMAF or IMA need to play, especially during this time, to promote the sport when there might be a lack of audience, or there might be extra procedures or extra training for the officials? And how do you think an organization like GAMMAF has risen to that challenge?
So the MMA officials are what I consider to be the unseen men in black. They're the guys behind the scenes. They're like a production team. They put in all the value effort, but don't necessarily get all the recognition. However, these guys are the ones that when the problem happens, these are the guys who face everything head on. Because if there's one wrong decision, maybe not a right choice of words, maybe if there's a controversial decision, it's the officials that have to come and step up and answer. Everybody is really quick to judge and criticize what the MMA officials do, and it's their role that's really critical. Now let me tell you about another thing. With most other countries, with most other sanctioning bodies, with most other MMA promotions, there's always a kind of enmity, a kind of cold war between the promoter and the sanctioning body. However, what we're doing with GAMMAF and IMA and MFN is we're trying not to burn bridges, but we're trying to respectfully bridge that gap. What we're doing is every official introduces his or herself to the fighters during these last 3 days leading up to the event. What the judges do is that when they meet the fighters, they actually tell the fighters, if you want me to give you a win on your fight, these are the criteria that I'm looking for. So they're able to convey what the judges are looking for. So the fighters understand what the judges want, and then they bring that to the fight. What we also do is we have counselors and educators with the GAMMAF staff that are available to go talk to the fighters and give them a briefing of what are all the negatives of performance enhancing steroids and substances and things like that. So it's not just enforcing the rules, but it's also kind of giving them a good education and a moral guidance before the fight actually happens. And of course, when it's time for fight night, when it's fight day, then these guys, they make the switch. Then they switch from educators and counselors to being officials to enforce the authority laid down by the Global Authority for Mixed Martial Arts Federations. Now, lastly, what I would like to say is there's one negative or one downside to MMA refereeing, is that throughout the world and until all the last few decades of MMA history, it's the referee that has the authority to decide if a fight has to be stopped or not. And if you've watched the last few UFCs, you'll see there were a lot of controversial stoppages by the referees. Maybe the referee didn't see the attack right. Maybe the referee saw it wrong. Maybe the referee didn't see whether the fighter was actually knocked out or not. But regardless, it was a controversial call. What GAMMAF is doing is that we have something called the GAMMAF restart rule. At that point of time, there is a judge that gives you a 2-minute time, and if you want to protest and if you need to restart that fight, we have officials who are going to look at the action replay and actually decide if that fits in within the criteria or if that fight needs to be restarted or called in favor of the referee. That is unheard of in not just Indian MMA but all over the world mixed martial arts. And so GAMMAF is bringing the next level of MMA officiating that is fair, at the same time unbiased, but we are bringing the best level mixed martial arts to the world to see what Indian MMA has to offer.
So talking about Indian MMA, I mean, this is a great card, and you've seen these fighters from way back, from when some of the fighters are now nearing retirement age, and you saw them when they started out, and you've been seeing them. So you want to tell us a little bit about the fighters and the fight card and what you think about that?
Alan Fernandez has done a fantastic job. I'm proud of Alan for what he's done with the fight cards and with the general running of Matrix Fight Night. I would want to say that this fight card, first of all, is providing an opportunity for all Indian MMA fighters, just because you can actually see all of the Indian regions being represented on this card. Secondly, we have the new school and we have the old school being represented. Although this is a great card, and although I would say each bout has a story and each bout has its own fight value for the fans, there are two bouts that I would say stand out very specifically. One is Srikanth Shekhar versus Anshul Jubli, and the second is Sanjeet Budwar versus Chaitanya Gauli. Now, this I would say is a perfect definition of old school champions versus the new lions. Anshul Jubilee is that guy who's just kind of made a remarkable short time rise to fame. And what he brings is complete MMA. You wouldn't call him just a grappler, but when he's on the ground, he knows, he understands. He's a smart grappler. When he stands up and when he's throwing his punches and kicks, the guy looks like a high-level kickboxer. So he's able to bring in a complete and well-rounded MMA to the fight. Who's he going up against? He is going up against somebody that's been so patient. Srikanth Shekhar, when he walked into the MMA cage at Super Fight League, he was one of the guys that got knocked out cold by Pawan Man Singh. But look at him today. He looks almost invincible. He's old school, but he's here to challenge the young lion. You know, although I'm part of the officials team, I'm really excited about this fight. And I think this is going to be one of the defining moments in Indian MMA history. And of course, when you talk about Chaitanya and Sanjeet, this is that kind of school of thought. Sanjeet Budwar brings in boxing and wrestling. Sanjeet, according to me, does not have jiu-jitsu. He does not have Muay Thai. He has a very clear training discipline, boxing and wrestling. But his wrestling is able to overpower most jiu-jitsu guys. And so when he's competing against Chaitanya Gauli, most of you do not know, Chaitanya Gauli is not just pedigree jiu-jitsu, but he also has a very strong judo background. I knew Chaitanya Gauli when he first took his first few steps into mixed martial arts, and he came in as a judo guy. He came in purely as a guy who would catch you, toss you in the air, and then choke you on the ground. Now he knows the entire drill. Now he knows how to submit. Now he knows how to fight off of his back. Now he knows how to pull out submissions out of a hat like a magician. So he's gonna fight. He's gonna try and answer the question, is it complete MMA that can beat the one or two dimensional fighter? Or is the smart, strong Sanjeet Budwar gonna dominate that fight? So these two fights are the ones that stand out for me in the entire card.
So tell us a little bit about, you know, you were talking about the fight card, but this time Matrix Fight Night doesn't have any women on its fight card. What do you think is the situation for women athletes in Indian MMA right now, and where do you see that going as opposed to the men, which you've described quite well?
So if you look at the evolution of international MMA as well, and leaving aside Indian MMA, it took a while for the entire women MMA community to develop and progress to a level that they could have their own promotion like Invicta and a couple other newer women's MMA promotions. So it took them a while for, you know, a promotion like the UFC to actually even start having the women MMA fighters and women MMA fighters to get recognized. I think that's kind of taking the same kind of pattern with Indian MMA. It's not that Indian women fighters don't have the opportunity. They do have the opportunity, but for them to reach the level of Matrix Fight Night, they're still going to have to compete at more of the IMA Nationals. They're going to have to compete more at the smaller promotions. So I think I'd use this opportunity to speak to all of the smaller MMA promoters in India to focus more on developing the female athletes, so that when they're ready for the level of MMA at MFN, MFN will be ready to invite them and give them that opportunity. So I think it's primarily just a pattern that Indian MMA is following, you know, with what's happened internationally.
Again, we were talking about those fighters that you've seen for growing up through all these years. What do you think about not just the change that is taking place, but the rate of change that is taking place in the evolution of Indian mixed martial art fighters? Because is the rate increasing, and is it increasing exponentially, or does it still have a way to go?
You know, with the entire cuisine of MMA, I'm going to use those kind of words. With the cuisine of MMA, the more expert chefs you have involved, the more variety of dishes you're going to get, you know, served up. Initially, there was just a handful of, you know, MMA gyms or just striking gyms or just pure wrestling gyms. Now that's changed with Indian MMA. Now we have some BJJ black belts here. Now we have some good level, you know, submission wrestling instructors here. Now we have striking coaches that understand grappling. So because we've got more people involved with the training aspect of the sport, now the athletes have more places to train. I know of so many MMA athletes who are training at one location for their striking, but then they can, take a couple hours drive and go and train at a really good grappling gym. So now, because there's so much more that Indian MMA as a community has to offer, now we've got grappling competitions happening a couple times a year in Indian MMA. So because of all of the active ingredients, we've got a better cuisine. So the rate, the quality, and the rapid rise with Indian MMA is just because the overall scene is developing. It is positive, it's still working at the same pace, it's slow and sure, but Indian MMA is a lot further than the last time I did an interview like this.